Oh my God. Oh, we're live. Hi, John.
Hey, Grace. How's it going?
I'm good. So glad to run into you again at the OpenAI thing last week.
Yeah, no, it was very fun. Definitely, you mentioned it felt like the Burning Man and of developer AI, and it really did just bump into everyone there.
I feel you. It's yeah, it's like I feel like there's actually I feel like a lot of feature that I wanted to try, and I know that you tried some of the features on the spot. Maybe we could do like a product review after this. Okay, let's start to start the show. I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So you work at Palantir, Stripe, and you have worked on Zinc before you started Ensemble. Maybe we could give the audience a little bit quick dive into like what are some core lessons that you learned early on in your career that kind of shape you into who you are today.
Oh, good ones. That's a good question. Probably the biggest thing is that like path dependence, everyone's always like, oh my God, path dependence is really important. You got to continuously compound up in your career. And I actually think that as long as you learn a lot and as long as you're making progress for what you think is actually really interesting, like that's totally fine.
Mhm.
I remember when when I was coming out of college, I was choosing between like one of my friends, Max Kolish, had
Yeah.
come up to me. Yeah, Max, and he was like, "Hey, we should build a YC startup. We just got into YC. It was
Mhm.
like my senior year of college, and I was like, oh, that's pretty dope." But I had already signed with this small company called Stripe at the time, so I
Mhm.
was like, not sure which one to do, and I just decided to go. Yeah, let's go build a YC company.
Mhm.
And then I kind of like flip flop back and forth between like we spent a ton of time building this YC company, and then I was like, maybe I should actually go to Stripe because I don't want to like go back on my word because like I signed a document.
Mhm.
Where nowadays, like it doesn't really matter as much, but still, like I was going back and forth across kind of like I went to work at Stripe for a year and a half, then I went back to work at Zinc, and I think the thing that I realized is like each one of these experiences taught me a lot about how to build stuff, how to make things go forward, like what's it take to build at a small company, what's it take to build at a really fast growing company as well.
Mhm.
And that it's okay if you essentially have a very weird resume or a very weird path as long as you're like learning at every point in that path. Doesn't really matter how you get to where you are.
For sure. Wait, I have a question for the Stripe thing. So like I know that like in your interview with this other podcast that you were mentioning about like you met your co-founder there and then you guys were discovered that like like Stripe want you guys to build some sort of like why are you not building like a Bitcoin platform instead of like building customer support, like, and then you guys realize that like people are spending a ton of money in the customer support space, and then if it's done right, you can save a lot of money. As a co-founder and CTO today, can we talk about like how much do you guys spend on customer support, and like um can you give us like an overview on like how does the industry work? Because obviously, and then we'll deep dive into like all these kind of like competitive landscape because on our podcast, I feel like the most popular area is kind of like customer support,
Yeah.
like the fun of Krista AI, Pylon, like everybody like was on, and Forethought, and then like there's like so many solutions in that space. Obviously, it's a very popular problem, and everyone's like benchmarking with Salesforce or like some other like really huge companies, and then nowadays like the Salesforce co-CEO went out to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about these like Ciara and Decathlon and stuff like that. So like, why don't we talk about like the evolution of the customer support area in general as well?
Yeah. Do you want the history rundown or do you want like the current place? Yeah.
I think maybe like a little bit of like the market would be great. So like, when you're like pitching to investors, you probably have to explain to them like why this market matter. And then the other part is like, I think a lot of it is just like there is like how does the money flow in the industry? Like who is actually buying these? Is that like a chief customer support officer at like Fortune 500? I know that you guys have clients like a DoorDash or Etsy, but like, you know, maybe we could talk about like just like how the money flow in general.
Yeah, good question. So when you think about customer support, I think the biggest number that you generally think about is the people costs. And depending on where you get this number, it's anywhere in the kind of like 200 to 500 billion dollars a year spent in people costs. And that's like usually your Philippine agents and your Indian agents, maybe in Africa, you spend a lot of money on these BPO, like what's called business process outsourcing, these outsourced agents. That's a huge chunk. And like United has tens of thousands. We've like DoorDash, one of our customers, I don't know if I can actually say, they have tens of thousands of customer support agents. That's the biggest chunk of money that is spent. And I think the other pieces of money that is spent are on software. And this is in various different places. The most important thing that you need is probably what's called a customer relationship management system, CRM. And that could be a Salesforce, or it could be a Zendesk or an Intercom, something like that. After that, you have all of these tools that help make your support team better and more efficient and kind of like operate in a better way. The most important one of those kind of depends on the time and year of like what you're talking. Right now, obviously, it's AI tools. Like, how do I reduce and automate as much as possible so that less and less goes to humans? But historically, it's also been things like quality review tools, where it's like, hey, I want to make sure everything that goes out of my customer support team looks and sounds the same. There's workforce management tools, which is what we start out with. And that is, how many people do I have and how many people do I need at any given time? And then there are all sorts of other things that help you make a really good outcome here. Right now, I think that there's also kind of like stratification depending on what kind of customer you are. So if you're United or kind of like a true Fortune 500 company, like not necessarily legacy, but maybe you've been around for a while, then you're probably using something that has a lot of scale, that is really, really cheap too, right? Like you can't use, or maybe you can, but it's quite hard to use like a top of the line model for every single interaction, because you're going to have a lot of interactions. Then there's like scaling emergent, fast moving companies, which we target. These are people like Robinhood, Stripe, Etsy, people who are like kind of going to be the next Fortune 500s. And you're probably building out like a new stack. You might be using us. You might be using a Sierra or Decagon for your AI. On your CRM system, you're probably using Zendesk. Maybe you've gotten big enough where you're switching over to Salesforce. And then at the small end, there's just a lot of different players, because like obviously customer support's like very big and there's like lots and lots of different ways to do it. I think Shopify might be coming out with something specific to this soon. You've got a lot of like gorgeous and gladly like specific players that are really good at e-commerce or really good at kind of like, I target like 10-person support teams or smaller. So that's a quick general lay of the land, but there's quite a lot in the industry overall.
I wonder, what does a journey look like to get a DoorDash? Because I'm sure like maybe when you met them, they were still like kind of like not as huge, but you also have to pick the right ones, right? Like the ones that like actually fast growing. Also, sometimes I feel like selling to the quote unquote sexy startup sometimes it's even harder because there's more solution to it. Like the younger people all know each other, like everyone knows everyone kind of vibe. So like I think like when you were selling, like there must be like some sort of like, I guess what would be your strategy to go after these kind of like up and coming ones? And then which one to go after too?
Yeah. I guess for when we were selling to DoorDash, it took a while for us to get to the size and scale where we would be able to support DoorDash. So we actually spent the first couple of years going after much, much smaller customers and building out the product before we even were able to get in the same room as DoorDash. I think the reason why we were able to sell DoorDash and the reason why we were able to do such a good job for DoorDash is because we were pretty developer focused. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the existing solutions for support tools that DoorDash had and then we're looking at were like very not developer focused. It was like, oh, wow, like you have to make an API to connect to DoorDash. And people are like, that's going to cost you an extra $200,000 in professional services, right? That's crazy. So we really focused on that, and we really focused on making the integrations to their internal systems really easy because they have a ton of internal systems. Today, how we get kind of like the up and comers, I think it's really kind of like I do a lot of sales calls, and I also try to go and check and see how are we actually going to support the ecosystem. Because I think you have a very, like the AI native companies have a very different set of needs than if you've been around for 5 or 10 years. And I think it's really exciting because it's like you just need fewer people as an AI native company, and you shouldn't go and hire a 10,000 person support team. That would be awful. And like the AI natives don't want that. The investors of the AI natives don't want that. Like no one wants that. So I think we are building a lot more product to specifically allow you to scale that a lot more easily.
I have a question here. So like, for example, I'm sure like the Fortune 500 company probably spent like more money. So like, I guess like what was at the beginning, you guys were selling to like even smaller companies, and then you kind of build out the tools to service like everybody. And then you move up market to like go after these like kind of DoorDash of the worlds. And then like and then later on, are you guys like thinking about going for just Fortune 500, or like I guess like how does the strategy kind of land? Because I've seen, because like obviously like we have to work with like different banks, so the neobanks, like there is like some of the neobanks are going after, let's say you start with a startup and then now everybody's dropping like tons of thousands of dollars into enterprise, into like Fortune 500 and stuff like that. But like on the other hand, there is like also the banks that are just focusing on smaller customers. Like, we can see like, I would say like Salesforce is kind of that approach at the beginning. So it's like smaller company, and then like you dominate in the smaller company space and then you move up. But like on the other hand, there's like, company that just like top down, like, you land 10 clients and then you're good. So how do you think about like the approaches to these kind of like two different bracket? And then because you probably need like a lot of money to like kind of work with a big company too, because they probably have like a lot of tailor stuff, and like the sales cycle is like forever. Yeah. And then I don't know when you're going to get paid because of like the cycle so long, the approval process.
I mean, I think this is very company dependent, right? I think it's dependent on who and what you as like the co-founding team and like as your set of skills, like what that lends itself to. For us at Assembled, I think we've been in this kind of like middle area for a long time. Like we do have some relatively large customers, like we have multiple Fortune 500s, but I do think that the middle tier is like very good for us. And the reason why we've done it that way is like maybe because we all came from Stripe and we have like this mindset of like, okay, make things go fast by like going with the smaller players. But our belief is that it just requires a lot of sales and a lot of customer success and a lot of like professional service. It just like requires an entire infrastructure for a Fortune 500 company to work. So for example, we were talking to someone like a healthcare company, very, very large healthcare company, I believe in the Fortune 500. And the things that you need to do in order for us to put our AI for customer support there would be definitely an on-prem setup, right? You need at least a few account managers. You need a year-long sales cycle. And you also need to be willing essentially to have a few engineers dedicated to building out their specific needs, right? Contract size is very large, but that's what you need to do. And if you go down that route, you're definitely not going back to like selling to mom and pop and, the 10 support team people of the general populace. And so I think you need to be very careful about where you go. And we have taken on some customers, and the customers that we do take on that are very large are the ones where we share a vision for where customer support is going, for where we want to go and where they want to go. And that generally tends to work really well, because it's like, hey, instead of having to dedicate 3 people to only your team, we're actually just going to build our product better and faster. And we're going to take the money that you paid us to hire more engineers and build more product, right? So for us, we've tried to be in the middle tier, like not super small as well, because I think you need some amount of scale, like customer support, like in order to save money, like you need some amount of scale there. And we've tended to kind of focus there as much as possible. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so another school of thought is like, so there is like from the product side, sorry if you see me typing, it's like I'm taking notes because today my note taker is not here. So like, so there's like 2 school of thoughts. One is like, the human, like the AI that help human to like function better. So like basically the call center people can like better functioning. And then the other part is like just replace everybody from the call center. What's your thought on that? And then like, do you think like what would you think like it's like the bottleneck, or like why that's like a lot of, because I know that you were like doing a demo call of like, oh, if like United use us, like this is like what it will kind of like look like, but like how do you think about the solution side of things, and then why does like everybody else get it wrong basically?
Yeah, well, I think that most people here are talking bullshit, in the sense that like I saw an interview recently where Brett Taylor was talking about like, we're going to automate everything. All of our salespeople, or we consider our AI agent just on commission. If we solve it, we get paid. If we don't, it's free. Like, I think that's bullshit. I'll tell you why. I also think it's bullshit to think like you're just going to use humans, right? It's like, no, obviously not. Like, no one wants to go talk to a human if I'm like, what are your business hours? AI is going to do a great job for me, right? I think the thing that people don't realize is like everyone has to be at the extreme ends, right? Because like if you want to raise a bunch of money, like you got to go and say I'm an AI startup, right? And then you got to like just try to automate everything away. But that's not how reality works, right? Reality is much more complex. There's a lot of things going on. In our view, the future of customer support is like this merging in between of you're probably automating like 90% of most tickets. And that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. Like most of our customers, when they turn on our AI agents, it's like somewhere between 60 and 80% resolution, right? Like, and you can get to 90% by adding tool calls, by adding like the ability to look into your backend systems. I think there's a set of things that you really need humans for, right? And that's going to be a premium feature. So for example, Grace, if you're spending $1 million with my company every year, like that's a completely different thing than if Bob is buying lip gloss for like $5, and that is like the second purchase that Bob has ever made on my platform, right? Like, completely different types of things. And one, you actually want a really, really skilled human agent to be able to like talk to you through what's going on. And there's all sorts of kind of like different pieces that you really want to have understanding of. For example, we work with a company that sells women's garments. And there was someone who wasn't able to get their return window in time because they had a domestic violence case. And it was like, this is the thing on my mind, right? That's a totally different thing to use AI for than like, hey, I just have a return and I like miss my window, right? So your AI needs to be good enough to know the differences and the nuances between all of those different cases and know when do I actually escalate to a human and how do I build out a set of humans that can actually be really, really good at like white glove support. And I think that's the future. That's what we are building. We're building both the AI agents, we're building the how do I set up the humans, and we're building the orchestration layer to understand like when do you decide like, hey, this is a human? And that is where we're putting a lot of our effort in terms of AI development, is like, how do you understand, how do you determine what is right for an AI and what is not right for an AI?
So how do you so I guess like what is like some triggers to get the human involved? And like how many, I mean, how do you think about the revenue side of things? Like, so how many support ticket that like you have to solve by AI that like you can actually make money from it?
Yeah, I mean, most things you can make money by solving from AI, right? Because like, um, even so, it depends on exactly what channel you're using. But most things, if you cost it out, cost at least $1 or $2 per contact. It's called cost per case, CPC, which is like a very important metric in customer support. Most people are hovering somewhere in the $1 to $10 range, right? And like, I don't know if you've seen the latest models, but they're very cheap compared to that. And even if you're running a ton of models, or like, let's say you're using GPT-5 high reasoning, like it's still going to be pretty cost effective. Where it comes and starts breaking down is when you're talking voice, because that's the one area where voice agents, we were just talking to someone who has Jamaican voice agents that get paid, I think it's like $1 or $2 an hour. And that's like incredibly cheap. And voice AI right now is more expensive because you have so many different parts of the stack. And we're betting that voice AI is going to become a lot cheaper over the next 12 months or so. But right now, the economics for voice are a little bit more difficult.
So what do you guys use? So like, do you guys use 11 Labs or like what's a whole, like, I mean, like, you know, I feel like they are I guess like on the market, they're like the most like public facing, and then like everybody's like kind of talking about them. But like, I guess like, what do you think about the landscape of the voice AI landscape? Like, what kind of tools are you guys using versus like, do you build that in house? Since like you mentioned, it will be like a lot cheaper. Is there any current solution that you feel like it's like a good kind of like add on to the current tech stack?
Yeah. So we use a bunch of different providers. 11 Labs is one of them. We have moved away from kind of like only having one provider, because it turns out, and we've always done this on our chat and our email agents, but it turns out that like AI providers go down a lot. Like one of the nice things or maybe bad things about OpenAI is like that they have set the market at 99.6% SLA being okay, right? So like a lot of these providers go down a lot, and in customer support, if you drop a call and this person's like refunding something, that's like pretty bad. So we are actually building out a system on LiveKit that allows us to plug in our speech to text, text to speech, plug in potentially using a real-time model as well. And so there's actually, instead of just using one provider, we're now actually playing around with a lot of different providers. And so I think it gives us the ability in the future to basically, hey, Cartesia comes out with a much better, speech to text model or text to speech model, we're going to go with them. And I think that's how most companies are going to end up in the future, is as opposed to like single vendor lock-in, they're going to be switching out model providers pretty frequently.
Wait, I have a question about the switching costs. Like, so how is it integrated into your system? Because my biggest assumption is like, oh, if I already plug this API into my thing, and then like the output is X, and like, if I want to switch, it will like, imagine if my customer is still like typing and I switch the agent and then like I'm fixed. So how does that kind of work from the technical end on like, doing multiple different solution at once?
Yeah, it depends on where in the stack, right? Because like it depends also on what your stack is, because there's like real-time models that are like literally talking to you as things are happening. And then there's the more typical like text to speech, speech to text like pipeline. For text to speech, you can actually just switch that out whenever, right? For speech to text, you can switch that out whenever, because it's like the end customer isn't going to see that. For the actual model that you use to convert, to understand like, okay, what should I actually say in this at this point of time? That's actually not too difficult either. The only part that you actually need to be careful about is the text to speech. And even then, you can do relatively straightforward A/B tests. Like you take a user ID or their phone number and you hash it, and you just make sure that like the same user gets the same like text to speech model, and so that they continuously have the same thing going on. So it's actually not that difficult to switch things out and to do a lot of A/B tests and see what's going on there.
Wait, I have another question. It's like, there is like people that are complaining on the little chat bot, and then there's like people complaining on call. Like, how much money do companies spend on like whether like it's on call or like on these like chatting agents?
They spend a lot more money on calls.
So call.
And the reason why is because there's a few things. Pre-AI, calls are a rivalrous good in the sense that like I can only talk to one person on a phone call, whereas on a chat I can talk to 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 people. And most companies are doing concurrent chats, and that allows you to essentially like take the demand and smooth it over a bunch of people. Whereas for calls, the other thing about a call is you like need to pick up immediately. Whereas for chat, you can like maybe wait like 5 minutes and it's still kind of okay. Whereas for a call, it's like, I need to pick up now, otherwise this phone call is dropping. So just there's a, like, if you think about it like a Poisson process, actually, like when calls are coming in, you need to pick it up, and you can actually mathematically model this out, and you can see like actually for calls, you need to staff way more people than for a chat. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is like just the people who can actually speak good English to your customers tend to be more expensive than the people who can write chat.
I have a question on the call thing. Like, I think the problem of like as a person who as a like single person company builder, like I would call these like customer support agents, and then I feel like there's like maybe two solutions. One is like maybe can people just like when I'm calling, if their accent's not like actual traditional English, like can they just use some sort of AI to just like translate real time, or is there like a lot of latency to it? And then
there are companies that are building that. There are actually quite a few companies that are building that. I'm actually not sure how they're doing. I haven't tried one in the wild yet.
I just feel like the other problem is like I think like when if it's just AI, I think the major problem is like the AI sounds like a AI, and then the AI also like clarifying your question 7 times. Like even you already explained it once. Like I feel like a human may understand some of the context to it, but like I feel like for the AI, it's like, oh my god, can you clarify what is your date of birth? And then like it's like, bro, what? Like, and then like every time there's no context like for my traditional account, so like if they can just fact check, hey, tell me, I don't know, like a password and something, and they're like, we're good. And then like instead of like just fact checking 7 of my like handpicked question or answer or something, but like I guess like how do you think about like the solution to the voice AI problem in the current customer success landscape, and then why do you build like how you're building it?
Yeah, I think that we do run into this a little bit, which is like preconceived notions of how good AI can be. And unfortunately, if you run into most voice AI, they're not like really AIs. They're like traditional AIs in the sense that like it's listening for particular words.
Yeah, like the keywords. And if it's like one, and then you get the answer of one.
Yeah. And we actually like I was listening to a call from one of our customers relatively recently, and as soon as they heard the voice, they're like, "Get me to an agent! Get me to an agent! Get me to an agent!" And then actually, as we progressed on the call, it was quite interesting because like we provided very relevant, useful information. I think this person was calling in about his car getting washed. I was like, hey, like what are the different options available for things in my area? And that's something that an LLM is really good at. It's like, hey, if you're in San Francisco, I know the car wash options. Like I can actually make a tool call and look at Google Maps and figure out where things are. And so LLMs are actually great at answering that kind of question. And by the end of it, it was like, wow, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And then the AI was like, you're welcome. And I was like, he said, have a good day to the AI. And so like that gives me a lot of hope in the sense that if you can get the interactions right, this is a far better interaction than even using like an outsourced agent because like their accent's going to be really good. They're going to know what's going on. They have access to a massive amount of information that just a human agent wouldn't have access to. So we are building voice AI specifically because we think like it can actually lead to a much better experience. And if you do it really, really well, it'll lead to a better experience. What are we doing in voice AI that is, different than most people? I would say it's actually just reliability, good quality calls, like really good contextual messages. Getting, for example, tool calls to work, because tool calls, they can take anywhere from like, 2 to 7 seconds. And if we were like, for 5, that was like 5 seconds, right? If I did that in the middle of a call, that would suck. So being able to take those away, that's a lot of the work that our team is doing, and just like making it really reliable, really slick. And of course, like adding in features specifically to customer support. I think a lot of what we do in support is answer like particular types of inquiries, like trying to make refunds, trying to make adjustments to what's going on, asking questions. And I think because we're so focused on support, we can do a much better job at those types of questions.
I wonder, have you ever thought about like, I feel like for me, like when I'm like, I think the agent approach, if the agent sounds like an actual human, it will be a lot better. So like maybe even like the voice, even there's like a little bit of accent or something like that's, or like some fun voice, it's a lot better than if I'm just listening to an agent, like if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah.
I feel like if it's like someone or like if it's like customized voice or like some sort of like human-like thing to make people feel confident on like, how they will like react, or like they just have like more trust and confidence than like, if I just hear it like, oh, press 1 if you need blah, and then I'm gone basically.
Yeah, no, I think, and the exciting thing is these models are getting better very quickly. For example, like 6 months ago, OpenAI's like real-time, like GPT real-time wasn't good enough to actually run production like workloads on. The GPT real-time is kind of like the speech to speech. So it doesn't even go through the text to speech to text pipeline. And it like gives you a much, much, much better latency. The problem with the 6-month-old version of this was you couldn't give it enough instructions, right? You couldn't be like, oh, like in this situation, in the situation where someone's talking about domestic abuse, you need to do something else rather than your normal thing. And there wasn't very much control. So it was great for demos, amazing demos, right? And like VC's probably funded a ton of people based on those demos, but once you roll it into production, it's actually really hard. Now with OpenAI just released GPT Real-Time Mini, and it's a lot cheaper, it's pretty fast, and a lot of the instruction following adjustments that they've made are getting much, much better. Same with everything in the speech to text to speech pipeline. Every single part of that pipeline is getting better. And like it's gotten better like considerably over the last 3 months. So it's really exciting. And for anyone who's built out their pipeline on say 11 labs and is just stuck on 11 labs, like you actually should check out everything else that is being there. Like I think 11 labs is great, especially their speech, but the entire world is moving really, really fast right now.
For sure. Let me shut out my window real quick because I feel like the grass people are coming.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, back. So I wonder, so maybe we could talk about the pricing, or like, do you want to give a demo? So you know that like we can actually share screen here. So like if you want to give a demo of your own product, Yeah, just a quick plug.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me close out all my random tabs actually.
Oh no. No, you can select the window. So it doesn't have to be
Oh, even better.
yeah, you don't have to shut up.
Even better.
Yeah, don't show us something that you don't want to show. Yeah.
Well, what do you want to see? Because we build a lot of stuff, whether it's a chat AI, or whether it's a phone call. I could do the phone call too.
Yeah, maybe we'll do the phone call in the chat.
All right. Let me.
I'm currently on your website. I can like also just show the screen, but like I feel like you probably have a better demo. So
Yeah, let me pull up our chat first, and then I'll show off. I'll show off what that looks like, and then we'll go to the phone call. Let me make sure I can get this right. Okay, so looks like a normal chatbot, which is quite nice. But a few things that I think are really interesting about the way that we've built out our general chat. So I'm going to ask about adherence, which is a customer support metric. And this customer support metric is something that is available, and something that we have in our knowledge base. We'll give a quick answer here. I think the most important things about actually answering for support, how is it different than occupancy? There's a few things that are really important, and one of them is speed. One of them is the ability to kind of like build on top of information. And then one of them is escalation and adversarial detection. You'll notice that in the background, actually, we are checking as these messages come in, whether or not this should be escalated to a human agent.
mm-hmm.
That's really important, because also this like the inputs to this are, what kind of person is this? Let me actually go to, if I go to the configuration here, you might actually have different levels of escalation depending on whether they're an administrator or a support agent, right? You might say like, hey, for administrators, I want to be extremely cautious about when I escalate, who I escalate it to, or how frequently I escalate it. But for a support agent, maybe just like a standard amount of handoff sensitivity, right? Like don't be too crazy there. You have the ability to go and be really specific about how you want to hand off and where you want to hand it off to, whether you're in business hours or not. And so it's really built for support teams so that they can figure out exactly how do I make this into something that can actually get to a human agent if needed, but also can stay with the AI if the AI can actually answer it. So that's the quick chat demo. Questions on this?
I think like, is there any particular domain of stuff that people ask about? Like, is there how much of the question people ask are like predictable? Like, for example, if I'm like a DoorDash, I will be asking, or like I saw that Canvas you're applying to, like maybe it will just be like, hey, I can't log in, or or some stuff like, they charge me, but like the person didn't come, and then do you have to reason that, like, did they come or not? Like, is there any proof needed? Like, how does it function in the back end, basically? And then like how much of the problems that can be solved to that just like by AI, because it's like generic that you kind of have a solution for it. But some of them are like, I think like at what point does backend kind of like have a
big impact? It depends on the customer. So for example, Canva, they only have like 10 or 20% of their questions that can answer by knowledge articles. And that's because they've spent a lot of time and effort over the years kind of like making sure that people have lots of resources to get.
Oh yeah. I hate any article that's needed. Like I feel like it needs to be like 2 steps, like literally screenshot of the step 1 and screenshot to the step 2. Because I'm a grandma when it comes to like fixing anything. Technology wise, even like we live in Silicon Valley, but yeah, it's really hard.
Totally. I think that depends on the customer. Some customers get a lot from just being able to answer kind of like the general knowledge questions. Most people, though, I think there's 3 steps, right? The first step generally for any support team, I tell them is you're going to get 50 to 60% deflection / resolution rate just by connecting your knowledge base to our AI.
Mm-hmm.
The next 10 to 15% is going to come from what we call case data enrichment. So that's like telling me more about this particular user. So what subscriptions they're subscribed to, what's their email, any kind of like past pieces of information that you have. And then the final one is connecting to tools and internal servers and maybe an MCP. So for example, Canva has actually built out an MCP for servers for us that we can actually use, but you can connect MCPs directly in our product and basically give us access to different tools that our AI can actually make. So for example, you could query Snowflake and do a whole lot of investigation as to what's going on if someone comes in with a really, really technical question. Or you can kind of like list the Snowflake tables. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can do once you start connecting these tools to the backend. And then you can either decide to have the AI just go and build this themselves, or you can, similar to what OpenAI released, you can come in, build specific guides and rules of like, hey, if they're asking about general questions, then use this for knowledge, and then kind of like make different tool calls here. So this is the more guided version of how you want to use tools, but also the other way you can kind of say like, hey, make this refund available is if you basically just go and make refunds available and have the AI do it themselves.
Like, this is a really stupid question, but how many times are the refund available thing that's just refund available? Like, so like, how much of it is like an auto refund? So like, it's probably cheaper to refund than like we fight over a ticket for like an hour.
Yeah, it's most of the time, actually, most of our customers, they're just like, if someone asks for a refund and they're in good standing, auto do the refund. But the only thing that you also do is you note the refund in their internal system, right? So like, you first have to check how many refunds has this person done. If it's like less than 2 or 3 and they've ordered like 50 times, that's an automatic refund.
Right.
But if this person's ordered 3 times and asked for 3 refunds, then they're going to probably get flagged and they're going to have to like explain pretty deeply why they need to refund. They might even get moved to a human agent to be like, what is going on here? Like, do we actually need to block you as a user, for example?
Sure.
But I would say like 80 to 90% of returns and refunds are kind of like, they fall within policy. They're really relatively simple to do. You might need to provide an image. Our AI will kind of look at that image and double check, and then just like send it along and give you a refund.
For sure. Okay, so I wonder when it comes to, I guess like for the tech stack. So like since last week we're at the OpenAI thing. So like, why don't we talk about like what is like 3 tools that you couldn't live without, and then like how do you kind of like ensemble your own engineering team internally?
3 tools I couldn't live without. It's a little bit repetitive, but I think it would be Cursor, Claude Code, and Codex Cli. Maybe Codex the web version.
The web version.
Yeah. So
I just registered Codex yesterday. I'm still in my onboarding to GitHub era, basically. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, it's so cool. We actually I just wrote a doc internally about how engineers can write and commit code into our code base. Yeah, it's great because like our PMs generally have more product knowledge and experience than our engineers, right? And so if there's a small feature or if there's something where it's like, I know exactly what needs to happen here, it's actually faster to write the code. Code is actually like the most precise language that you can have, right? So I think that's really exciting. For me, my personal workflow, I use Codex, Claude Code, and Cursor a ton. For Codex, Cly, and for Claude Code, that's like when I have a really big, juicy, meaty thing that I want to do. And for Cursor, that's like I'm doing bespoke, natural, organically, that's like the locally sourced code written by me, handcrafted. But it's actually like there's quite a big range for what I'm doing in all of those.
Maybe we could talk about like, how do you put together your own engineering team? Like, who is actually there, like doing what? And then can you vibe code infrastructure these days?
Yeah, 100%. Like, of course. I know, like, infrastructure is the easiest thing to vibe code, honestly, because you can have really good, well, depending on what kind of infrastructure, but you can have really good unit and integration tests on the back end. It's actually a lot easier to write tests.
Another really dumb question. I mean, I half hope like everyone's listening, half hope everyone's not listening to my really dumb questions. But I wonder, how do you think about, so like, as for an engineer, so when you're building a product, so like, do you build like the infrastructure first, or like do you build like a product and then like launch it, and then if something break and then you go out and then fix a bug and stuff? And how much bug can be fixed by ChatGPT? Because currently my 100% bugs from my lovable products are fixed by ChatGPT because I don't know how to fix it. So, or Cloud, I'm just like copy paste the entire paragraph into ChatGPT and be like, can you fix this? What is like the actual coding process for like an actual eng?
Usually I start off with the schema. So this is like, here is because the schemas are the hardest things to change. Like, you can make a lovable project and then you can kind of like, if you end up changing the way or how, like if you change the definition of a user, doesn't matter if you have AI, that's going to be a hard change in the future, because like you might have to go to your users and tell them, hey, I'm changing this, right? And like whenever that happens, there's a lot higher friction. So I usually start with, what does it mean to be a user? Like, what are the fields and the properties? Like, do I have an email on this user? Do I not need an email on this user? Can I have lots of duplicative users? Like that kind of stuff. And then from there, I don't know. It kind of depends on the day, either the front end or the back end. But I always start off the schema because I think that's the most important thing to get right. In terms of fixing bugs, I think the AI coding tools do a really good job, honestly. The most important thing, I think, when fixing bugs is that you write a regression test for it. So like, it doesn't matter if you use AI for it. I think actually AI is pretty good at this point. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't use it, but you should still write a test. A regression test in engineering is basically like, when something breaks, you fix it, and then you write a test that would have caught it originally. And then if you have that, then either a human or an AI can take it and like they can change the code later on. And if they accidentally break the thing that broke, that test will catch it, right? And that's just good engineering practice. It doesn't matter if you're using AI or if you're doing something else.
The LinkedIn user, we can see your name, but he said, or she said, agree, schema and thoughtful design is so important. Yes. Okay. So maybe we could talk about pricing. So how do you like, so obviously, the Sierra of the world, it's like pricing based on like outcome and like, do you think like people can actually charge human money to AI? Because I personally think the only thing AI have competitive advantage is it's cheap. So no offense. But yeah.
I think so. I've been to Manila this year like 3 times, so like a lot. And it's really stark. Like when I was going into this outsourced agency, and it was on this island where you had to like make a stop in Manila and then a stop at a different airport, and then you're basically driving through like rice paddies, and it's like it's a very rural area. When you look at like actually the responses that humans are providing, actually a lot of it is actually using macros. Macros are these things in customer support where you've pre-written a response and where you've said like, here's exactly what is going to happen. I've maybe got a bank of like 500 macros that each customer support team has built over time for all the different scenarios. And you as a support agent are doing a few things. You're understanding like which situation is this? Which macro should I use? Do I need to make a backend call? Backend call being like, do I need to like update something in the backend? And then 4 is personalizing that macro to the situation. I think all of those things can very reasonably be done by AI in a pretty good way. And actually, one of the things that I find a little frustrating about we have a human co-pilot AI product, but the change rate on that product is quite high. And it's because like you, as a human, you're like, I want to feel like I'm, the work that I'm outputting is like my work. And so people will tend to change whatever is provided. And the problem with that is like, we've gotten graders to go look at the before and the after. And they're like, actually the AI's response was better than the human's response, but like, you still want to edit it and change it. And so I think that depending on how the models become better in the future, like I think that you should be able to you should be able to build stuff much more quickly and provide a higher level of and quality of support in the future. It just might be a different mix of people, right? Because like the internal teams where you're hiring really, really skilled like college grads who are very, very good at, solving issues. Like you've got the 4 seasons, like, attendant type person. That's going to be really hard to replace with AI. But the general standard level of support, I actually think you can increase the total, like the general standard of support by using AI.
How much money do you guys spend on these like foundational models? Or like what's like, I guess, not giving us like a specific number, but I guess like what amount of the engineering budget is spending on what?
Quite a bit. It's in the millions. And
is that let's call it like 80% spending on GPU or 80% spending on ChatGPT, basically?
It's not exactly 80%, but it's in the ballpark of like, AWS and OpenAI and like Anthropic are our biggest, the biggest things we spend money on.
What's your thought on like, I guess like the future of the spending? So like how much of it because I feel like, do you expect that in the future the cost will drop, or do you feel like it's just gonna be very stable? Everybody's like spending money on these things.
This is a funny one because I think costs are both going to drop and increase dramatically. Here's what I mean by that. I think that as the models get better and better, maybe one step back. OpenAI and the people that I know at OpenAI and the people I know at Anthropic have all talked about what are called long horizon models, right? This is like a model that can run for hours instead of minutes, or run for days instead of minutes. And that, by the nature of the model, by the nature of the amount of compute time involved, is going to be incredibly, incredibly expensive. And they're probably going to give much, much better results. So you're already kind of seeing this with like the early models. I think Gemini and OpenAI, and I think maybe someone else provided, like, there's like this big math competition and they all aced that exam, where that's like state-of-the-art level results, like better than any human, like top of the line math kid out there. So I think that's going to be very, very expensive. I think that's also, if you look at the trends in the way that the current models are going, they're going to get a lot cheaper. And that's because there's all of these techniques like quantization, like the ability to shrink models, the ability to take data sets like from like a much smarter model and pipe synthetic data into these other data sets. Like it's going to become a lot easier to take a good model and make it smaller and faster, because that's essentially what DeepSeek did a really good job on, is like, how do I take kind of like almost ChatGPT 4 level performance at the time, but now probably GPT-5 level of performance, and just like shrink it into like a bite-sized pack as much as possible. And that's what I think is going to happen. You're going to get like really cheap, good, relatively good LLMs that can run really fast, and you're going to have the most expensive LLMs that are going to be so expensive, like probably unfathomably expensive, that are probably not going to be for the normal person running like, help me write my email. They're probably going to be hopefully solving cancer and doing research, that kind of stuff.
I guess, like, do you feel like in the future of like the customer service landscape gonna be like a one winner take all, or like do you feel like it's kind of there's a lot of players continuously, like how does it look right now, and then like how does it look in the future basically?
I think it's unfortunately going to be a little like, I don't think it's a winner take all market, because like, even if you just look at the current entrants, like Sierra, Brett Taylor's company, is really focusing on a lot of the enterprise. And I think the enterprise looks very different than if you've got an AI native company and just like going really fast, right? And I think also that every single problem that you run into, especially in support, is very specific to your integrations and the data that you have and the data that you can pull in and pull out. And so I think a lot of these companies are going to end up kind of like focusing on one particular area and getting really good there. I think we'll see what happens, but I don't think there's going to be like one runaway winner. I think there might be 3 or 4 runaway winners, and we're vying to be in that 3 or 4.
Love that. Well, on that note, maybe we'll wrap with a 1 minute fire run.
Yeah.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite, sorry, what?
Book.
The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes.
What's the biggest takeaway there? Or is there a takeaway, or like just like a good read?
Manufacturing capacity has a massive impact on technological development. The plutonium bomb was a lot of science, really hard to make, but the uranium bomb, it was just how much freaking uranium can you process? And that was like a $10 billion at the time project. So
interesting. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Alive or dead, or just currently
it's
alive?
It's your party.
I would invite probably Nikola Tesla. I'd invite maybe Johann Sebastian Bach, and then I don't know, probably a bunch of the AI people, because they're doing exciting stuff.
Oh my god. Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Emily Oster. I worked for an economist I worked for. She helped me understand a lot more things.
Where can we find you outside of work?
Probably at home building stuff, either woodworking or code.
What are you building right now?
Right now, it's mostly work stuff, but right now, in terms of woodworking, I have a coffee table that I'm building too. It's taking a little bit too long.
Yeah. I read about like you are woodworking enthusiast.
Yeah. It's very like a lot of engineers, I think, end up being woodworkers, because it's like a similar type of, like, you're building stuff on top.
Yeah, for sure. It's like the yoga for engineers.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing. Well, John, thank you so much for coming to the show today. It's such a fun chat.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, appreciate all the time.
Okay, let me quickly end stream.